Record to the cloud.
All right, well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We're excited to have you for the new IMA Student Series, Finance and Accounting Professional Panel. And we have a really great lineup of panelists that are here, and we're looking forward to hearing from them shortly. And I have to say, this is an incredible turnout. I think we had over 700 that RSVP'd for this. I know there's still some trickling in. We're getting close to 300. So we're glad that you can be here with us today, and we're excited to bring you this panel. So a few things before we get started. This session will be recorded. I know it was asked a couple times. Also, you were muted upon entry. So if you could please remain on mute for the duration of this session, it would be much appreciated. So before we get into the agenda, I have a few of my colleagues from IMA Global joining me. So I'll start it off and introduce myself. My name is Tyler Skelton. I'm an academic outreach manager at IMA. I'm based out of the Seattle area, and I work with colleges and universities in the Western US to help promote the Cma certification and other faculty and student resources we have to offer. Joining me is Mary Patterson. Mary is also an academic outreach. Is someone on? She's based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and she works with colleges and universities in the Eastern US. And today our moderator will be Mitra Kleinberg. Mitra is a strategic account manager at IMA, and she oversees corporate relations for the Western US. So let's look at today's agenda. I'm going to give you a brief overview of IMA and the CMA certification, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because we want to go to the main portion of this, which is the panel discussion, where we'll be spending a lot of time there. And throughout this session, our team will be monitoring the chat. So if you have questions for us or the panel, be sure to put them in the chat box and address them to everyone. I think that's important because if you address them to just me or Mary, for example, sometimes it's hard to see. So make sure that's directed at everyone. And then at the end, we'll have some time for the panel to answer some questions that you may have. So let's first talk about what is IMA, or the Institute of Management Accountants. So IMA is a global association with more than 125,000 members worldwide who are accounting and finance professionals working in business. Our organization has more than 300 professional and student chapters located in cities and campuses around the world. So this creates a great networking opportunity. And I can't stress enough the importance of networking and doing that while you're still in school. If you're serious about your career, and for some of you, that's coming up very soon, maybe even a couple weeks until graduation, joining an association like IMA is going to help you connect with professionals that are working in industry and provide you with the resources to upskill. IMA also offers the CMA certification, the global standard in management accounting, in addition to many other career enhancing resources. So let's first take a look at management accounting versus public accounting. And we use these two as an example because oftentimes when we're speaking to students who are true accounting majors, they hear a lot about public accounting positions, but they don't really hear as much about management accounting positions. And if you're a finance major, don't tune this out because you hear the word accounting. I think all of our panelists that we have with us today have some sort of finance background in their education and even in some of their job responsibilities. You'll also see when I talk about the exam, how finance shows up on part 2 of the CMA exam. So this picture is to help show the different roles and responsibilities of the internal management accountant versus the external public accountant. So if you take a look at the rectangle on the left, this is where a management accountant is employed. So on a daily basis, the management accountant has responsibilities for developing and implementing processes and procedures, for example. They could be managing different parts of the finance function within a company. They can also get involved with both internal and external reporting. So these are important for value creation and strategy for any organization. And then you have the public accountant, which is an external accountant, and usually they're providing advice to their client on details related to audit and tax. They're not involved in the daily operations or decisions that support the implementation of a company strategy. The main focus of their job is to ensure that the organization is complying with appropriate regulations and requirements. So hopefully this helps you see the roles and the day-to-day job responsibilities of these two types of accountants are very different. And to summarize this, essentially the management accountant helps the company make money, while the public accountant helps the company stay in compliance. So these are two great career paths, but what's important is that you make sure you're getting the relevant certification, whichever path you decide to go down. And for some of you, the CPA might not be the right fit. Earning the CMA provides you with a globally recognized professional credential, and you can have a very successful and rewarding career by earning the CMA by itself. If you can get both, the CMA and CPA are very complementary to one another, and it will set you apart from others. And we have a great article that Mary's going to put in the chat that talks about dual certification and lays out a 9-step plan of how you can earn both the CMA and CPA. But just to expand on that a little bit further, the CPA is a license granted by a US state. So each state has their own education and work experience requirements. So although they're pretty similar from state to state, it does vary. And the CMA is a global certification. So someone sitting for the exam in China, Dubai, India, Netherlands, they're all taking the same exam, which is great if you want to work for a global organization, or maybe if you're an international student and want a certification that's recognized around the globe, or even if you want to be involved in the strategic decision-making in a company, the CMA is a great choice. So this slide here shows us where management accountants work, what they do, some of the type of responsibilities and roles that they have in the workplace. So you'll take a look at some titles here, and we're going to get more into this with our panelists here. But as we fill this in, these are some of the common job responsibilities that management accountants have. And then as we continue to fill this in all the way, you'll see, where do management accountants work? Really, they're working everywhere, from not-for-profits, private firms, government organizations, multinational corporations, and even academic institutions. So this slide here is derived from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, and what it tells us is that over 75% of accounting and finance professionals in the US are working inside organizations. So that's about 25% or so that are working in professional services, such as your public accountants, usually supporting their clients with audit and tax advice. And it's important to understand this because it's very likely, if you start your career in public accounting, that within 3 to 5 years, you'll move into a position in industry. And that's where IMA and the CMA certification could help you make that transition. And even if you start your career in industry, there are a lot of great opportunities available to you. And again, IMA and the CMA are here to support you in your career. So here's the exam structure, and I'm going to give a very high-level overview of this. The CMA exam is composed of 2 parts, testing your fluency in both accounting and finance. The exams are each 4 hours in length, starting with 100 multiple choice questions and concluding with 2 essay scenarios, which are essentially like mini cases. The exam parts can be taken in any order that you would like. So we'll take a look here at part 1, which is financial planning, performance, and analytics. It has 6 sections. So this is going to be more of your accounting focus. Think of your cost managerial courses, your intermediate accounting classes. You'll also see technology and analytics is in this section. Moving to part 2 is strategic financial management. It also has 6 sections, and here is where you're going to have more of your finance topics that will be covered. So financial statement analysis, risk management. You'll also see professional ethics included in that section as well. So hopefully some of these topics are looking familiar to you, and it's important to note that you can take this exam while you're still in school, and I encourage you to do that because a lot of what you're learning in your classes right now is content that will be tested on the CMA exam. And as students, you're just more efficient studiers. And also the content that's covered is very relevant. I'm sure the panelists would agree that they need employees that have a mastery of these skills. And I think we'll go into that a little bit more when we get into the questions. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is our CMA Scholarship Program. So if you didn't hear a word I said the last few slides and you only pay attention to one, this is the big takeaway here. IMA offers 10 scholarships per year at every 4-year college and university. The CMA Scholarship covers all costs related to the CMA program. And Mary will be posting a direct link to the scholarship nomination form in the chat. So really, in order to receive the scholarship, you just need to be nominated by a faculty member. So pretty simple. And most of the schools that we work with have identified one faculty member to be the main point of contact for this program. So if you're not sure who that professor is for your college or university, please email Mary. I think she'll also put her email in the chat. And then at the end, we'll have our contact info at the end of the session. But with the scholarship, students will receive at no cost 3 years of IMA student membership. Also, the entrance into the CMA exam program will be covered. 2 CMA exam sitting fees will be covered. And then on top of that, you'll get access to the Wiley CMA Excel online test bank for 2 years. So it's an incredible program, and I hope you take advantage of that. And just think what a great thing that is to add to your resume, that you passed a professional certification exam before you graduated, or at least that you started that process. So it's important to IMA to make sure that we're providing professional development courses that are not only important to our members, but important and vital to the industry. And over the last year, we've launched some great courses. So you'll see data analytics, blockchain, cybersecurity, robotics process automation, or RPA. And actually, we're offering the RPA series that includes 4 courses at no cost to our academic and student members through June 30th of this year. So as a member, you would just need to claim this course before June 30th, and you would have access to that for a whole year. So this is a really good deal, as it normally costs over $100 for this series of 4 RPA courses. And it's important that you have an understanding of these topics because they are at the forefront of accounting and finance. So I encourage you to check out our website in these courses and also just to see what other offerings that we have for you. So now let's move on to what you all came here for, and that's to meet today's panel. First of all, I want to thank all the panelists for taking time out of their busy schedules to be here with us today, and we're very appreciative of that. And I know this is going to be a great discussion, so let me introduce the panel here. I'll first start with Ashley Edwards. Ashley is a Global Plant Finance Director at Cargill. Next is Shelly Hogans. Shelly is the Vice President, External Reporting and SOX Compliance at Limbach Holdings. Next, we have Luis Martinez Luna. Luis is a finance manager, G&A, and operation excellence at Bose Corporation. And some of you may recall that we originally had Dylan Azevedo from Disney, who was supposed to be on the panel, but he had something come up last minute. But we're very fortunate to have his colleague, Meg Rodebeck, on. And Meg is a senior financial analyst, studio operations at the Walt Disney Company. So with that being said, I'd like to turn it over to Mitra to begin the discussion. So please give us a few seconds to pull up the panelists for you.
All right, thanks, Tyler. I'm very excited to be moderating this panel. We've got really great panelists, all from different states in the US, all from different industries, so quite a range. And you can see that management accounting is needed at all these different types of companies. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the first question, and this question is really for everyone, but let's pose it to Meg first. Would you briefly describe your career path to date, provide some details about your current company and your responsibilities within your role?
Sure, thanks. So let me just start here by saying I share a wall with the piano studio. So if you hear some background music, I'm sorry. I hope it's not too distracting there. But I graduated from BYU with a bachelor's in accounting in 2017, and I went from there straight into the Disney Accounting and Finance Rotation Program. So I spent 2 weeks in that program, moving to a few different teams and getting experience in different kinds of accounting and finance. So I worked in merchandise licensing for products that you buy with, Mickey Mouse or other Disney properties. I worked in financial reporting for the studios. I also worked in Sarbanes-Oxley compliance and in ABC television finance. So that was my rotation program. And I currently work with a team called Studio Operations, and they are the technical post-production department. So they get the movies ready to go out, not just in English, but in all different languages and all different formats all over the world. So some of what I do is I budget for about 15 different departments who all have a specific job in that post-production world. And for those departments, most of what I do is forecasting in the finance world, but I do also support a little bit of the accounting world with the quarter close and things like that, and some capital budgeting and planning. So just a little bit of everything there, but that's my path so far.
That's great. Thank you, Meg. And let's move on to Luis. Would you briefly describe your career path to date and provide some details about your current company and the responsibilities within your role?
Yeah, well, hi, everybody. So I actually started my career in banking because when you get a finance degree as a college student, you think that's what you do. But after a year of doing that, I realized that it wasn't for me. Not that it isn't for somebody here, but just it wasn't for me. And I started looking for another opportunity. Through my network, I had an opportunity to interview for a leadership development program with Avery Dennison. And so I transitioned from there into my first rotation, which was as a sales analyst, essentially. And I was very closely tied to the business intelligence systems in that role. And that's where I developed my passion for the data and analytics side of what we do in finance. Spent 6 months in that rotation and then transitioned off to a really interesting role where I actually served in a blended capacity as a regional FP&A analyst, as well as a management accountant, cost accountant in a manufacturing facility down in Juarez, Mexico. So I actually had some time out of the country as part of my rotational program. And in that capacity, did a variety of things. So managing the forecasting cycle for the facility, as well as the North America region, managing the transition. We were actually having a global footprint project where we were consolidating a few manufacturing facilities from the US. And so we stood up a new Oracle ERP instance, and so had an implementation under my belt early on. And then from there, got the opportunity to transition over to Bose, where I started in a similar role, supporting inventory analytics. I stood up Power BI reporting within Bose. That was the first iteration of any Power BI reporting from Microsoft at Bose. And then spent some time supporting product costing, so doing a lot of traditional management accounting work with year-end processes, as well as just the monthly variance analysis to product cost. Ultimately moved over to FP&A, where I led the corporate FP&A planning cycle, so forecasting, budgeting, targeting for about 2 years, administered the EPM cloud tool that we used. And then from there, I transitioned to my most recent role as finance manager, supporting legal, HR, finance, doing a lot of the same things, but from the finance business partner perspective. And then the most interesting part of my role today is we're in the process of standing up a COO's operational excellence office, where we'll be responsible for being the center point of all corporate-wide initiatives around performance management.
Wow, that's really
So
interesting.
a little bit of everything.
Yeah, quite an array. That's really cool. And I see you're wearing your Bose.
I am.
Nice. Got to represent. Okay, Shelly, moving on to you. Can you answer the same question?
Yeah, sure. Like Luis, I've had kind of a long variety of careers and have done a lot of different things. And as you heard today, that I'm the Vice President, External Reporting and SOX Compliance. And it's for a $568 million construction company. So we do a lot of work for companies like Disney, as an example. We even helped to build the Little Caesars hockey arena. So that's the type of thing that we do. From a background perspective, my undergraduate degree is a Bachelor's of Science in Accounting from Penn State. So I'm blended, Penn State Altoona and Penn State University Park. And I also have an MBA with a concentration in finance from Drexel University in Philadelphia. And so I say, if I look back over my career, I'm like, how did I get here, overall? Well, it's because I worked for a number of different accounting roles during my career. You heard Tyler say, you might start out in public accounting. I did. I worked for 5 years in public accounting for both Arthur Andersen and Deloitte & Touche, right? And that's where I first obtained my CPA license within a year of working, right? Because again, you think if you go into public accounting, you want to get that particular certification because it helps you to advance there. Eventually, I did move into industry. I became an assistant controller for a manufacturer, Corning Incorporated, and we made televisions. So completely different responsibility because there I managed the budget, I managed the inventory, I coordinated the month-end closing process. And then I did, I shifted gears. I've also been a director of finance for a not-for-profit organization, completely different, where I assumed the traditional accounting functions like accounts receivable, accounts payable, payroll, fixed assets. And in addition to that, I kind of got my global experience, if you will, in some manager roles for telecom, and where I could create metrics for new business divisions, standing those up to determine how they're going to be evaluated, doing that FP&A or financial planning and analysis work, and was even a financial advisor to the chief marketing officer. That's when I decided to actually sit for the CMA exam at that point. So in addition to that, I've worked for myself. I created a public accounting firm myself that specialized in consulting, tax return preparation, financial literacy for individuals and small businesses. And again, entered that realm of Sarbanes-Oxley work, doing that as a consultant, helping a company become SOX compliant, which means I documented many of the business processes and determined what internal controls should be put in place. I've also worked closely with IT, right? Technology. So I developed an IT skill set. I've helped out with numerous systems implementations and even helped to take a financial services company public. So completely different things as we look at what we do. And today I prepare the company's Form 10Qs, the quarterly reports, the 10K or the annual report. And I'm really focused on some of the internal controls in risk management, areas like cybersecurity and the impact of a pandemic on a business, right? Those big things. So Aside from that, I really enjoy teaching as an adjunct accounting professor. You can teach too. I teach intermediate accounting to adult learners at Indiana Wesleyan University, and sometimes I also teach for Point Park University. I am an advocate. You'll hear me talk time after time on this call here about advocating for continuous education, because when you hold certifications like the CPA and Cma, it's important to stay current. I can't stress that enough. So I've had a lot of roles in a wide variety of industries over the course of my career. But what does this mean to you? My career is proof that you can have that variety of jobs and opportunities with an accounting or finance degree. So congratulations on pursuing a great degree.
That's great. Thanks, Shelly. That was a very impressive background. Okay, Ashley, can you please answer that question too?
Yeah, sure. I'm sensing a theme here in the diversity of experiences, which is great. So currently, I'm the Global Plant Finance Director for Cargill. And for those of you who may not have ever heard of Cargill, it's the largest private company in the United States. It's a food and beverage manufacturing company that's global. We're located in about 70 countries, and we have about 160,000 employees, with a revenue of about 115 billion annually. So my scope is looking at our manufacturing side of our operations. We have about 980 plants worldwide. And so looking at how and how finance supports all of those manufacturing operations globally. So looking at supply chain analytics, manufacturing analytics, and cost strategy primarily. And similarly to Shelly, how did I get here? You know, my career has taken a wide variety of experiences. So I've worked in everything from leading a data and analytics function to leading finance transformation strategies. I led our finance process improvement team for a number of years, but I actually started similar to Luis. I looked at cost accounting as an initial passion of mine. So I've always loved working in manufacturing environments and looking at how and why things cost what they do. So held roles as a controller and an FP&A director after that, and joined Cargill as a part of an acquisition in 2012. So I think the theme here is very relevant, that the types and diversity of roles that you can hold across these different industries is so varied and very, very exciting. So there's so many different paths you can take.
Great, Ashley. Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity in management accounting, just, you know, globally. So really great points. So I'll stick with you, Ashley. What are the benefits of having a professional certification, and how did you decide on the CMA? And then finally, how has that helped your career specifically?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think originally I chose the CMA rather than the CPA because honestly, I was never really interested in public accounting. And as I looked at where my passions were and the things that I really loved about finance, it was all about value creation, strategic partnership, business partnership. And when I looked at the CMA, everything on the CMA were skill sets that I knew that I would need in my career. And it took me a little while. You know, I wasn't lucky enough to figure that out in school. So I liked the initial sessions about take it in school. It's much easier. But you know, I've been always passionate about areas that the CMA covers. And the benefits of the certification, other than just, you know, having the certification on your resume, are truly the networking opportunities. You know, what you learn and the skills you learn on the exam, you can take that external perspective and continually apply that to your job. But meeting individuals in the finance profession across different industries and getting that external perspective is relevant and important on a daily basis in my role.
Great, thank you. And Shelly, can you comment on that as well?
Yeah, and again, as I mentioned previously about staying current in the profession, you know, because it's constantly changing, right? Business is constantly changing. If we turn back the clock 20 years, what's cryptocurrency, right? So we know things are evolving and becoming different. So as we talk about obtaining a certification, it's actually evidence of excellence in your field and your commitment to actually stay current. So whether you have a CPA or a CMA license, there is a requirement every year to have what we call CPE, or continuous professional education. So for the CMA license, for example, you need to maintain 30 hours of CPE annually. 2 of those hours need to be in ethics, right? We want ethical accountants. Of course, that makes sense. And as opposed to CPA, and again, you heard Tyler say, your state requirement, is what determines what your CPE credit requirement is, but it's typically 80 hours over the course of 2 years with 4 hours in ethics. So very important. So again, having a certification is a differentiator, right? So when you look at all the little boxes on the screen, right, how are you different from the person in that box next to you? That's what you're after to try to differentiate yourself from the next person. Certifications can make the difference as to whether or not you get promoted. So for example, if you are in a large public accounting firm, you cannot be promoted to manager in a public accounting firm without being a CPA, right? So who wants to be stuck in that situation of not being able to advance because you don't have a certification? Let's take a look at job descriptions. Some certifications on job descriptions say, quote, required, and some are preferred. So in the case, if it's a required certification and you don't have it, you're probably not going to get an interview for that position, right? So if I were you, I would recommend that you Google job descriptions for different roles to see which certifications are important to that specific role. And that really determined for me why I chose to pursue certifications and when I did, right? It was a kind of a matter of, well, I'm seeing all these jobs that are either CPA or MBA preferred. What if I get both? Then you're increasing your opportunities to be successful in that. Again, it's about marketability and uniqueness. Let me share some statistics with you. You can find this also online from GLIME. And in case you are not familiar with who GLIME is, GLIME provides some educational materials that will help you pass the exams that are connected with these certifications that we're talking about. What if I told you that by passing the exam, you can earn 29% higher median income over your career? The exam I'm referring to is the CPA exam. Now, what if I told you that by passing an exam, you could earn 36% higher median income over your career? The exam I'm referring to now is the CMA. So this is now the audience participation part. So knowing this, by a show of hands, who wants to earn more money, right? Who doesn't, right? So why not take one of these exams if it were relevant to your job and it could help you get ahead and you even make more money? So one last statistic for you. For those who hold both the CPA and the CMA certification, you will earn approximately 55% higher median income over the course of your career. Now, these statistics that I'm referring to are taken from the 2020 IMA Global Salary Survey. So not only has the CMA helped me to make more money in my career, it's actually made me a smarter business person, right? Overall, knowing how to perform analysis to support decision-making for business. And that's what Ashley was talking about. It's making her a smarter business person. And I always say that accounting makes the world go round because there's usually an accounting concept at play, kind of in everything. So now I have this broad base of knowledge in planning, forecasting, analytics, IT, taxation, because of these certifications. And so while I just talked to you about two of the certifications, CPA and CMA, know that there are many others, depending on what your role or your job is. So if you end up going into tax, maybe you want to be an enrolled agent, or if you want to do internal audit, maybe you're going to become a certified internal auditor. But the point is, certification is important. It makes you different from the person next to you.
That's great. Thank you, Shelly. Yes, definitely a differentiator. And also, as you mentioned, because of the CPE requirement, once you become certified, it does put you on that path of being a lifelong learner, which is very important.
And Mitra, this question came in, and I think it kind of ties in with this, and Luis and Meg might be able to chime in on this. A student asked about CPA versus CMA, and at companies, more or less, are companies recognizing the CMA, or how do you convey how important the CMA is to a company, or do you even need to do that? Does the company already recognize the CMA? Because for a lot of students, they hear CPA, 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 and they might not hear as much about the CMA. So if someone wants to jump in or Mitra call on someone, that came in, and I think it applies here.
I mean, I'm happy to chime in on that.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so I would say in my experience thus far, through a couple companies, I have found that they're very familiar with the CMA, and oftentimes someone in the finance organization, at least one person, if not many more, will hold a CMA already. And so you usually don't have to sell anyone on the idea of the CMA. In fact, in my case at Bose, when I brought up, hey, I want to pursue my CMA, they said, great, we'll cover the expense. And a lot of companies will do that for you. So I don't think there's, in most cases, going to be a need for you to push on it. They know the value, especially knowing that there's the CPE requirement that you're going to have to stay current and you're going to be able to be a model for everyone else. I supported a rotational program as part of my FP&A role. And one of the things we pitched is, can we build out a curriculum and potentially have it be a requirement for our rotators to actually complete the CMA process? And so companies are well aware of it.
Thank you. And that's great that you mentioned the rotational program. You also earlier mentioned you started your career in an FLDP or Finance Leadership Development Program. A lot of the large companies offer these programs, and they are considering or already really promote the CMA for their new hires and those in these programs. So that's really great that you mentioned that. Okay, great. This question is for Meg. You received the CMA scholarship while you were still in school, and you became a CMA. So congratulations. Can you tell us about the scholarship process and how you prepared for the CMA exam? And if you have any tips on how to prepare or study, I'm sure the students would appreciate that.
Sure. So the scholarship process for me was, as soon as I figured out that the CMA was what I was looking for as opposed to the CPA, I went to my managerial accounting professor, and he told me he had, I think, 10 scholarships that he could recommend students for. And so he kind of laid out for me some standards he would want me to meet before he would recommend me for that scholarship. And those were kind of just to make sure that, you know, I was serious about taking it, because he didn't want to recommend me if I was going to wash out and not take it, and that I could probably pass it. So I finished my junior core year with all of my accounting coursework, and I went back to him and he said, great, and he recommended me. And so that was, that part's easy because he takes care of it, or she does. And then I heard from the IMA, and I think how it worked was that I'll have to defer to the professionals who know the current numbers, but I had a certain amount of years once I qualified for it to get my tests done. So I sat on it for about a year while I finished school. And then when I was ready to take the exams, I just reached out to the contact from IMA and she activated it. And it was a really easy process to use, and I'm glad I did it. As far as tips for the exam itself, what I would start with is do whatever it takes to motivate yourself to study. So for me, I'm very deadline driven. So I had to have the tests scheduled, and then I had to know when I needed to be ready, and then I could really buckle down and start studying. So I think I saw this question in the chat. I spent about 6 weeks studying for each part, but that's really going to be what you do best. So you'll know how you study. You'll have done a lot of school by the time you do this. So just, plan on what works best for you. Another thing I would say is expect to work hard, because it's not easy. There's a huge breadth of topics that you need to have at your command in that exam, because you don't know what's going to come up. So just expect it to be hard work and a big commitment to take seriously. But having said that, it is doable and you can do it. And my last piece of advice would be to take it as close to your schoolwork as possible, because in my experience, I only waited a year after I was out of school, and I was getting rusty and I wished I'd taken it sooner. So I would recommend, as soon as you want to take it, start planning on getting it done. So that's my advice.
Mitra, this came in through the question. I think it goes with this, and I'm sure others can chime in. Someone asked about, is it better to start working and then take the exam using that experience when you work? But obviously Meg agrees that, and I think the rest of the panel would also agree, that it is better to start the CMA either while you were in school or directly out of school. So if anyone else wants to chime in on that and on your studying and roughly the amount of time that you studied.
Yeah, I can chime in a little bit, because I am like Shelly, I think, one that waited, and Luis, taking the exam and studying for the exam while you already have a full-time job is very difficult. The exam is intense and the coursework is intense. And even though the topics are relevant to your career, Completely am an advocate for please take it before, as you can while you have time in school. In terms of studying for the exam, I echo what Meg said. I think I planned 8 to 10 weeks before each exam part, because I think I was a little bit more outside of school than Meg was. So the topics were even a little bit rustier. And the coursework is intense. That being said, I do want to go back a little bit to what Shelly talked about the earning potential, because, it's interesting. The credential often opens your door. It's what's on the resumes that opens your door, but it's really the concepts that you learn that are over and above what you typically learn in college that affect your earning potential. And so I say that because the role that I have now would never have been possible with just what I learned in college. It is that coursework and the education and the continuing education that brings that external view and the current skill sets to the roles that I've had. So don't think it's just one and done either. So commit to that continual education, like Shelly said, because it's very, very important.
Great, thank you. Yeah, the nice advantage of doing it early on is that, students have that study mode mindset already. You're already used to doing that for your current classes. So like Meg said, you get rusty after a little while after graduation. And the CMA is unique in that it's a certification you can start taking while you're still in school. You don't need your degree just yet. So take advantage of that. Okay, great. So moving on to the next question, let's hand this over to Luis. Can you give us an example of specific CMA concepts and skills you've used on the job?
Yeah, sure thing. So I actually have the CMA exam structure up here as reference. If I look through it, I can pretty much point at all of them and say, yep, those have all been involved in a variety of things, but I'll touch on a few. So they oftentimes overlap as well. So I'll touch on planning, budgeting, and forecasting, performance management, and technology and analytics all in one. So all of that is blended into the role I had as leading the forecasting process for Bose, where we have a cloud solution that's intended to facilitate the process. We have the performance management that's the output of that process, and we're measuring against KPIs and actuals, et cetera. And then, embedded in that is also the ideas and the concepts of planning, budgeting, forecasting. And then, once we actually get through a forecast process, we want to be able to tell the narrative, right? The idea of storytelling with the data. And so using visualization tools like Tableau, Microsoft Power BI, name your tool, even, Excel charts, we're able to then tease out what are the insights that our management team wants to know. What can you gather from the data that tells the story about why is a trend going up or down? Why are we, what's the driver of our key variances? So all of these things typically work together. And maybe I'll offer another bit of insight that I think is more traditional in terms of finance. So discounted cash flow analysis and investment decision-making. Those are concepts covered in part 2 of the CMA, and they overlap a little bit with part 1 as well. But in a different role, I supported our corporate ventures and corporate development team. And so we were looking at potential acquisitions, and in any acquisition, that is the core financial measuring tool. You're using a discounted cash flow analysis, looking at IRR, looking at your return on investment, what's the payback period. All these concepts are covered throughout the CMA exam.
Great, thank you. And I'll ask the same question to Ashley.
Yeah, sure. I want to try to cover different parts that Luis said, but when I saw this question, I thought the same thing. I don't think there's a concept that's included in the exam content that I haven't used, but I'll speak maybe to my most current role, because some of the concepts that are coming out are very, very relevant. So one of the big initiatives that we're working on is rolling out a cost driver planning program or methodology worldwide. And so in order to do that, you have to deeply understand cost drivers, cost performance analytics, and cost accounting fundamentally. But concurrent to that, we're rolling out a pretty comprehensive data and analytics strategy with robotic process automation and automation of processes and standardization. And when I took the CMA, that wasn't included, but through continuing education, now it is. And so these two things together are probably the biggest things that I'm using right now. But I think, like Luis said, we're also looking at asset optimization globally. So that really looks at capacity utilization and IRR of the individual facilities and how one facility operates versus another. So benchmarking analysis and cost competitiveness.
Great, thank you, Ashley. And, it's interesting. You mentioned RPA. Luis mentioned visualization tools like Tableau, Power BI, Excel, telling the story behind the numbers and how important that is in management accounting, especially. And so that really feeds into the fact that in early 2020, the CMA introduced that new section on part 1 of the exam, data analytics and technology. So, and that was purely from, demand that we saw from industry leaders saying this is what we really need in our incoming hires at our company. So thank you for bringing that up. This question is to Shelly. We already touched on this a little bit, but I know students have a lot of questions on this, so I might as well elaborate a little bit further. And I do want to mention that, according to statistics from our organization, IMA, about 20% of CMA members are also CPAs, and they can be very complementary designations. Since you have both the CPA and CMA, can you expand on which credential is more beneficial to certain job roles?
Yeah, sure. Let me kind of start by saying, again, obviously both designations have their advantages. And it's not like I go to work and say, I'm just going to use my CMA skill set and I'm just going to use my CPA set, right? I've got the best of both worlds. So that also, helps you as you progress in the job place. But let's just talk about CPAs for a minute here. From a viewpoint standpoint, they're specialized in public accounting. They're at 30,000 feet up, right? They come into an organization kind of after the fact to audit, consult, attest to the results of a company. And they use this concept called materiality, right? Because they're only there for a few weeks. They can't look at everything that's in a business to examine. So public accounting, think consulting services, audit, attest, roles like internal auditor, roles like external auditors, IT, tax accounting. Those would be even like technical consultant on the latest and greatest rules, accounting standards that come out, let's say on revenue recognition. Those folks really specialize in public accounting and would benefit by having a CPA license. Okay. On the other hand, a CMA is in the business, right? 10 feet from the ground, not 30,000 feet up. You're actually in the weeds. You're actually doing the work. You're having your work checked, right? Audited, attested to, and you're involved in the day-to-day with the business, the actual decision-making, right? So if you think about it, CPAs are focused on external reporting, what's told to the public, for example, investors or lenders who may rely on statements, while CMAs concentrate on internal reporting, cost management, cost reduction, budget planning, forecasts, those types of things. You think about it, the CMA actually has a lot of customers, right? There's a lot of people who need information from accountants within the organization in order to help them with their decision making. So as a CMA, you get a chance to work with even more people. You get to work with different functions like IT and HR and legal and inventory, right? Other parts of the business. So some of the roles that you could have, with a CMA license, FP&A, financial planning and analysis, right? Management accountant, you could be a senior accountant, you could be a controller, a corporate accountant, or even the chief financial officer, right? So the fact that you have potentially even one certification helps you, let alone if you have both certifications. So, when the auditors come to visit me, they already know I know how to audit, right? So I kind of know what the right answer is. It's their job to get the right piece of paper from me that supports the information I'm giving them, right? So that helps because I also understand then internal controls. I understand what the auditor is going to be looking for from me, right? So let's turn it around the other way. If I'm a CMA also, and I happen to be working for a public accounting firm, how does that help you? You better understand your clients, right? Because you understand what's driving their decision making. You understand risk. So you're able to audit better, right? You're able to actually give business advice to those people in the business because you've been there, done it. You understand business. So it helps you also if you're in a CPA capacity or if you're in a public accounting firm and you possess the CMA license. That's the business part. That's how you're going to add value to your clients. So I think, again, you can't go wrong by having dual certifications for sure.
Great,
And this
thanks, Shelly.
question came up, I saw it, and I think everyone will probably agree with this answer, but someone asked, is it possible to be too overqualified with multiple certifications? And I don't think anyone would say that that's a bad thing, correct?
It's definitely not a bad thing, because again, we're talking about the education piece. We're talking about your ability to bring value to your company, to your client, to someone, right? To help out with the decision-making process. So there's no such thing as overqualified. I mean, who calls the public accounting firm and says, I'd like to get advice on that, but I just want to talk to the staff person. You want to talk to the most qualified person that can possibly help you with your decision. So by getting that education and having a variety of certifications to draw on, right? That just makes you more valuable, and you can add value to your client or to that situation.
Yeah, diversity of experience is never a bad thing. So, looking at the diversity of what you could learn and how you could apply that in any given position, again, what gets you in the door, and then how can you continually add value to the organization that you serve?
Exactly. Great. Well, that's it for the prepared questions, but we do have some time for some of the questions the students are asking through chat. And Mary, you've been monitoring that, so I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. So one of the questions that came in, this came in a couple of times, I think we did cover it, but students had questions about CPE for CPA and CMA, and if you can double count them, or I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but and it is yes, what you earn for CPA will also apply to CMA.
Yeah, if they're NASBA approved, then which many of our CMA CPE courses that we provide are NASBA approved, then you can use it towards your CPA license as well. Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing I would add, especially for students, right? Many of you are probably going to pursue a graduate degree as well. Your graduate courses also count towards continuing professional education. I'm in the middle of my master's, and I've been able to fulfill my requirements for the year using my term credits. So that also helps you.
Great. And I guess this is a question for the panel. A lot of questions that were coming through were about the experience requirement, which students are always asking questions about that. And I think Tyler posted the link with our CMA handbook for the experience requirements, but did you have any issues with covering the experience requirement of 2 years after you pass your exam? If anyone wants to touch on that.
I mean, I would say if you actually, oh, go ahead.
Sorry,
Go ahead,
I'll just be quick. I was just going to say, so my 2 years of experience came from my rotation program, which, as I mentioned, was pretty varied. It was, a compliance and also straight finance, and all of my 4 rotations there did count against the experience requirements. So I didn't find that it was too hard to find relevant positions.
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to add to that is that the requirements, if you actually read them, they're broad enough. And what you'll find is that when you get into a career, especially nowadays, everything's so dynamic that you're going to get a very broad experience that's going to allow you to meet those requirements.
Great. A question that just came in, do you see value in someone who is already a controller but not getting a CMA, going ahead and getting the CMA anyways? I feel like the experience that got me the controller position and the experience as a controller for over 5 years would count for more than a CMA, but maybe not. Would anyone like to touch on that?
Yeah, maybe I can take that one, because I was a controller when I gained my CMA. And I would say absolutely. What I learned up to that point in my career, again, it's all about diversity of perspective. So, at times in your career, what you're going to find is that you learned what you learn in school, and then you learn what you learn in the job. What the CMA gave me was additional external knowledge and perspective in areas that I hadn't worked in up to that point. And that allowed me to get roles like FP&A director, like director of finance transformation, and like the role that I have now, that I don't think, had I not gotten that education and that experience, that I would have ever had the opportunity to hold.
Yeah, something I hear from a lot of people who get the CMA, they say, even if I already applied it in my day-to-day job and was familiar with the information, it just provided this extra sense of confidence. And that confidence is so important, especially when you go to that decision-making table with other leaders. So that's something that you can't really measure, but I've heard it so many times. It's something you really gain from becoming certified.
I agree.
Mary, I was gonna add one here that I came across. Thanks for all the questions, by the way. It was hard to go through these, but this, Shelly, I think this one might be geared towards you, but I think any of you can answer to the value of the CMA. So this one is from Nick. If I'm going into public accounting, how much value can the CMA provide to me and my clients, or would the true value be only realized in an industry role?
Again, I think you can always leverage what you know. And again, that could differentiate you from other accountants in your public accounting firm, right? Because you have more of a broad base than others. So again, you'll be able to more quickly help your clients because you will understand their vantage point, right? From a CMA perspective, you understand the business and the decision-making that needs to occur from that end. So again, I would not shy away from if you're going into public accounting. And again, that's not the only avenue to have a career. You heard that from all of us, right? But you can leverage and find value in the CMA and use that for your clients.
Yeah, we have many CMAs that are both CMAs and CPAs in public accounting, and they always are telling us that it's a differentiator for them compared to people that just hold the CPA.
Great. And I really like this question. It was, does IMA have something like a career center or a way to network with other IMA members? And absolutely. I mean, that's the benefit of what Tyler talked about in the beginning, that we are a global organization. And one of the main points is to network with other people that are in accounting and finance. And what happens is there are IMA chapters all over the world. And we really want you, this is actually going to be a takeaway that I'm going to talk about, for you to join IMA as student members where there's a discounted rate. But the idea is that we want you to network and work with our members. I mean, Ashley, Shelly, Luis, Meg, they are all members of IMA and they want to help students and connect with you. I mean, that is the whole point of IMA as well as the CMA exam. But absolutely, I would look up your local chapter, try to contact the president, and they want to get involved with your schools as well and do presentations with your accounting clubs, your Beta Alpha Psi. So definitely with that.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, Mary, you know, the networking opportunities are just great through these large global organizations. And I know, Shelly, you're very involved in NABA, you know, which also has similar networking opportunities. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, again, I think it's important always to belong to a professional, you know, association. Mm-hmm. Again, the networking, being able to stay current, having access. So for example, if you participate in some of the professional organizations, while today you may not be able to present at your company, right? But you need to have some public speaking skills because you're going to need to influence, you're going to be researching different things, and you might have a decision that you need to put into the organization or influence somebody else making a decision. So you're going to need some presentation skills. What better way to learn how to do that than belonging to either a student chapter or even a professional chapter? So when I belonged to, you know, the National Association of Black Accountants, I learned how to raise money. That wasn't my day job. I learned how to do that. I learned how to organize various events. I learned how to network and relationship build. And I did a lot of public speaking when it came time for that. So when I actually had to, for my day job, go and talk to the audit committee chair, I already knew how to do that because I had practiced it over here, right? Where it didn't cost me my job if I made a mistake. You know, that was my safe way to kind of experiment with things. Professional organizations help you to network. I've gotten jobs from people because I belong to an organization where they knew me, right? So I actually got job leads from being connected and networked. Okay, I had a decision to make it work. I got stuck somewhere where I needed more help in that decision-making. Because of my network, I could pick up the phone and say, hey, have you ever experienced this? And that person could share with me, this is how I handled it, right? So networking is important, and just being connected, right, to others who are like you. You want to always have that so that, you know, when you do have a situation where you need to pick up the phone, you know, you are not alone. You might be the only accountant in your organization doing this, but I guarantee you somewhere across the world, across the network of IMA, you can pick up the phone and call people and say, hey, I need your help. and people will be happy to help you because we have things in common. We have accounting as an interest in common. We belong to a common organization. So that's really what IMA is about. It's about helping each other in situations, for sure.
Exactly.
And along with that other question, we also IMA has a job board where companies will post job positions specifically for management accountants. And in August, we are doing a special student career fair with companies that are looking to hire for internships and full-time positions. Again, management accounting, and these are companies that support IMA as well.
Great. And I know, Mary, you're going to touch on that in a little bit. So just one final closing question for the panelists. What would your advice be to your younger self as a student? So Meg, how about we start with you?
I think my advice would be to calm down a little bit. I was really nervous about placement and kind of getting where I needed to be. But, you know, after just a couple of years of working, I realized that there's just a lot more flexibility than I expected. So no matter where you hire in or what job you're hiring in for, I find that most people are really willing to help you develop whatever skill you want to and get involved wherever you want to. So any work experience that you get is going to be good. You can shape your experience a lot like that. And then my other advice would be maybe a little on the nose for this event, but definitely get involved in your clubs on campus, your IMA student chapters and all of that, because it's not just networking, it's a community of people like you who understand your accounting jokes. And then it's great experience. So that's probably what I would do more of.
Awesome. How about you, Ashley?
Yeah, I think when I thought about this, the thing I would tell myself is don't box yourself in to one type of role, or, you know, there are so many diverse experiences and types of development that you can get in finance. And I think the panelists today, I enjoyed hearing about the experiences because it can lead you in so many different directions. And so as you're in school and you're thinking about what career you might hold, research different industries. You know, there are so many varied types of roles and they're all very different. Find what excites you and your passion, because working in a field that excites you and that you're really passionate about and you love going to work every day is so much more gratifying than what you might think of as like a daily grind that you get stuck and you're not passionate about. So really research different types, talk to industry professionals, you know, ahead of that, reach out and connect and hear about the types of things they do on a day-to-day basis and find what most excites you. Because it takes some of us a long time to do that, and the faster that you can do that, the happier you'll be.
Great. Luis?
Yeah, so I would actually say that one of the things I do today that I didn't do back in college was to be more aware of industry, right? Be curious early on, because what I have found now is I'm doing my master's because I discovered a passion I had in data and analytics that I wish I discovered when I was doing my undergrad. If I knew that it was a trend, if I knew that there were resources out there where I could explore these things, I probably would have doubled up with a finance or computer science, or I would have done something differently had I known what I know now. So I would say, get familiar with, you know, your Wall Street journals, look at, you know, get early insight into the IMA, get plugged in so that you know what those industry trends are and what skill sets are out there that industry is looking for. Even if it's something just for the sake of exploring, it doesn't mean that you're going to go do out, you know, job A. Just get a rough understanding, and in doing that and that curiosity, you'll find what you like to do.
Awesome. And Shelly?
I have 3 little pieces of advice. Number 1 is not going to surprise any of you. Number 1, always look to learn something new, right? That means never saying no to trying new assignments or getting new responsibilities. Be teachable, right? My second piece of advice I would tell you is network and seek help when you need it. And number 3, very important, don't judge or gauge your career by what others are doing. Your career belongs to you, and you are responsible for developing it. You get to determine what success looks like for you. So I say go for it.
That's great. Thank you so much to all the panelists. You did a wonderful job. We're very lucky to have you all share your experiences. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mary for some closing remarks.
Sure. Well, I want to thank especially our panelists for this event. I can tell by the questions that were coming in, both from students and also professors, that this was definitely an enriching And I want to thank all of you for taking the time out to do that. We will do more of these because I know we didn't get to answer everyone's question, but even for myself, this was interesting to hear from all of the panelists. A couple things that we wanted you to take away from this event. Number one, if you are a junior or a senior or a graduate student, go for the CMA scholarship. So I posted the link in the chat, and also I gave you my email if you wanted to see who the professor is at your school to nominate you. But please take advantage of that. There is never going to be a better opportunity to sit for the CMA exam free of cost. So please sign up and get that scholarship for this year. And if you are a student, I know we had a couple freshmen and sophomore, join IMA. We have the $25 membership using the Campus 20 code. You can now see what the benefits are of becoming part of a global organization like IMA. So please join the IMA and get involved. That's the great thing about IMA and the CMA exam, is that you can start as a student. And I don't know if this was said before, or just to reiterate it, to sit for the CMA exam, you can start sitting for the CMA as a student. So that's why even more so that you want to go for that student scholarship and get it free for you while you go through it. And then if you want to go to the next slide, Tyler, because there were a couple of questions that came in about this. So the other reason why you want to become a student member of IMA is we have plenty of student events that are centered around you, the accounting and finance students. So we talked about the IMA virtual career fair. It will be on August 27th. And then we also have the IMA student leadership conference, which will be on November 5th. Both of these are free to IMA members. And these events are specifically for students in accounting and finance. So 2 things to take away from this: join IMA and also get that scholarship and ask your professors to nominate you. Once a professor nominates you, you will get those scholarships. So here are our contact information. You can contact myself or Tyler. I cover the eastern half of the United States. Tyler covers the western half, but feel free to email us. We'll get it to the right person. And we want to thank you so much. We know it's the end of the semester. We know you have finals and everything else coming up, but thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.